Great. You're getting a real taste for this. Beautiful. You're warming up our audience nicely. You utter psycho! You hacked them all! I knew you'd be my golden boy! Yeah! That was one killer shot. Attaboy. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you James Earl Cash! They're gonna cut you up now. We haven't got all night. Get out there and start killing! Okay, are you ready? Camera, action!
Rockstar North, developers of the Grand Theft Auto series, releases its most controversial game to date. Inspired by the gritty 80s and 90s VHS video nasty aesthetic, Manhunt is, from the outset, designed to make you uncomfortable. In most video games, the joy of a playthrough is often found in leading a hero through struggles and triumphs, ultimately achieving success and resolution. Some games even have you take control of anti-heroes, deeply flawed, even morally ambiguous characters that seek redemption in the service of a higher calling or otherwise worthwhile cause. In Manhunt, however, you play as a complete scumbag, James Earl Cash. At the start of the game, Cash is being put to death via lethal injection. As capital punishment is reserved for criminals found guilty of capital murder, our leading man isn't exactly a role model. Theories speculate that Cash was a hitman for the mob prior to incarceration, helping to explain not only his skillful handling of various weaponry, but his cold, unforgiving demeanor. Despite being sentenced to death, Cash wakes up several hours later, having been dosed with a heavy sedative instead. A mysterious voice barks over a PA system to bring you up to speed. It turns out that you've been granted a second chance. The only caveat is, in exchange, you're being forced to participate in a snuff film. A snuff movie is a series of murders that are filmed and then sold to customers. And you're the star performer. We all like to see our characters redeemed by the end of a tale. Cash has no such emotional arc. Manhunt is a bleak story of revenge. Despite an excellent layer of subtext suggesting that we, the player of the game, are revolted but darkly fascinated with the brutality we see, the overall story remains straightforward and doesn't divert into anything pretentious. Cash fights to survive against hunter gangs, corrupt police, and particularly gruesome special characters while clawing his way to the man responsible for putting him in this awful predicament. Lionel Starkweather, the director. Voiced by legendary actor Brian Cox, Starkweather was once a prominent movie director that, upon his fall from glory, moved to Carcer City, where he descended into madness. Becoming obsessed with grotesque violence, he soon began directing snuff movies that he could sell to seedy businessmen. With newfound cash flow, Starkweather was able to hire psychopaths on his payroll to star in his twisted films, along with gangs to act as a hunting force to seek out the victim, and eventually expanded his enterprise to include paying off corrupt cops to look away or even participate. The only real hero in Manhunt is the journalist, referred to as the journalist. She's on an honest and noble mission to expose Starkweather, as well as corrupt Chief of Police, Gary Schaefer.
Okay, pull over here.
But it's another block or two to my apartment.
Just shut up and stick with me if you want to stay alive.
In the end, the journalist has the most virtuous arc, but at a cost.
Okay, but you gotta watch out for me.
In keeping with my overall thesis on Manhunt as a windswept and relentlessly hopeless tale, bonus audio files published on Rockstar Games' official website detail the journalist's own plunge into a frantic state of extreme paranoia and intense post-traumatic stress after witnessing the absolute bottom of human depravity.
Another quiet.
Despite her ambitions of toppling a wicked enterprise, she ultimately is doomed to suffer with emotional trauma for the rest of her life. The story is told through traditional cutscenes, as well as through Cash's earpiece, with the director guiding him through this blood sport. As was typical of Rockstar games of that era, the cutscenes are excellent. Voice acting, the script, and the graphics are expertly crafted.
Think you're tough? Think you're tough? I'll rip your fucking head off!
In my opinion, Rockstar's storytelling prowess has hit two peaks in the past 20 years. Once in 2008 with Grand Theft Auto 4, and again in 2012 with Max Payne 3. Manhunt isn't at that level, but does offer an early glimpse into what the developers could do when framing gritty, ugly stories into stylish, entertaining mini-films to convey their storyline. It's obviously a nasty premise, but told extremely well.
This is the best kind of therapy money can buy.
Running on the Renderware engine, which had previously powered both Grand Theft Auto 3 and Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Manhunt's graphics haven't aged particularly well, and even in 2003, the engine had already begun to show its age. That said, I think Manhunt is a beautiful video game. On a technical level, it obviously doesn't hold a candle to modern graphical powerhouses like God of War Ragnarok or Cyberpunk 2077. Point is, what Manhunt lacks in shiny, it makes up for in spades with its ethos. Manhunt is dripping with personality. Every detail that you see on screen was lovingly crafted by brilliant designers and artists who were obviously passionate about bringing this grungy, sickly world to fruition. Every environment, every character, every weapon, all modeled and rendered with care and adoration. As dingy as it is, I never ever get sick of looking at this game. Every time I walk through the rubble-strewn streets of Carcer City, under the cold veil of a gentle thunderstorm, I always get that distinctly grimy and chilled feeling. Despite being gruesome and depressing, the game is alluring and frankly, downright artistic. Carcer City itself is truly another antagonist. Glass, rusting metal, scattered bricks, broken down vehicles, dilapidated buildings, and locales in decay. The world you play in feels utterly depraved and rotten, wrought with poverty and inhabited by the worst humanity offers. Carcer is based on a combination of various cities located in the Rust Belt.
Make your mind up, buddy!
The Rust Belt is a term referring to regions in the United States once prominent for automobile manufacturing, coal mining, and steelmaking that, for a multitude of reasons, has since declined into severe economic disrepair, urban decay, and lack of education. In place of prosperity came drugs, crime, unemployment, deficit spending, and hopelessness. Allentown, Toledo, Detroit, Dayton, and the pit of hell itself, Gary, Indiana. Carcer City is the distilled version of the violence, corruption, and madness that has eroded the Rust Belt steadily since the 1950s. Again, Manhunt is designed to make the player wish they were anywhere else, and to that end, the visuals do a stellar job of conveying this downtrodden world of grim destitution. The levels in the game, referred to as scenes, are visually unique and outstanding. These range from filthy city streets to an abandoned zoo replete with familiar displays and landmarks. On to a decaying shopping mall. To the very prison where Cash was held until the night of his supposed execution, and finally, a lavish mansion where unspeakable horrors await you in the upper level. Each area is assiduously crafted to be repellent, but you can't help but return to them time and time again for yet another run. Even the game's manual, yes, the instructional booklet, was incredibly detailed and creepy. It was presented as a Valiant Video Enterprises catalog, the company that distributes the snuff films in the world of the game. This thing is an honest-to-God work of art. Character designs are incredible, especially the designs of the various hunter factions that Cash squares off against.
It's in his pants somewhere.
You start against low-level thugs in ski masks and jeans.
Come on, stay sharp.
Wielding blackjacks or just their bare fists. But as the game progresses, you face a wide array of wicked, colorful, and creepy foes.
Shit. I've had it with this.
White trash skinheads in hockey masks, machete-brandishing ex-military psychos in assorted camouflage, and criminally insane lunatics wearing smiley face masks and blood-soaked, tattered dresses. Even Cash is fully modeled in first person, which is a nice touch. As was so typical of Rockstar in the early 2000s, Manhunt is saturated with a distinguished artistic flourish. However, the visuals have nothing on the sound.
He's gonna suck your guts!
Pussycat, I'm crashing this party! Search and destroy! Take it back here!
Next to the original Mass Effect and perhaps Max Payne 3, Manhunt, in my opinion, has the best audio design in any game I've ever played, and I've played a lot. For me, the audio experience is what defines Manhunt. I've discussed the crucial importance of audio design in games before, but to quickly reiterate, first and foremost, a game should be fun to play, of course. But I'll tell you, there are games like Silent Hill 2, seen here, that kind of play like shit, let's be honest. But I've beaten that game multiple times and I love it so much. And a major part of that is because of the engrossing sonic experience and the truly palpable atmosphere that this helps to create. As discussed already, the visuals of Manhunt represent the desolate world of Carcer City, but are enhanced to sublimity via the soundtrack.
Geek, rock and roll! Hey, who the hell's got my six?
Composed by Craig Connor, who was also the lead music producer for Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and Red Dead Redemption, just to name a few, Manhunt's soundtrack is a gritty blend of synthwave, industrial, and darkwave.
Daddy can't help you.
Some people compare it to the work of legendary composer/director John Carpenter.
Fuck you.
This is gonna be so special. It's delightful. Look at the way he moves.
But Craig's work is distinctly his.
Stay close. Make a sound and I'll kill you myself.
Every track gives me a deeply unsettling feeling, as if a centipede were crawling up my back in a cold room. But not everything is so demure. Some songs, like the main theme, have a killer beat and are seriously catchy.
Hold on, here it comes.
Here's the best part. The music doesn't play on a generic loop as you stalk through each scene. 2 years before Ubisoft did this with Amon Tobin's music for Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, Rockstar had Craig Connor record each track with various intensities and with different tempos, so that each track could be used as a living, breathing tarpaulin, shaped by the actions occurring in the game. If you're hiding in a shadow, a buzzing, droning song will keep you uneasy.
All in a day's work for the Cerberus, boy.
I hope that's you, asshole.
If the hunter is suspicious and investigating a disturbance, the tempo will pick up and cause one to grip their controller mighty tight as you prepare to make your move. If you're caught, well,
I think we got him. I'm getting on ammo.
the music shifts into a pulsing, grooving arrangement that will have you on the edge of your seat as you seek respite from the maniacs on your tail. It's extremely good, and Craig Connor is a musical genius. Speaking of maniacs, the voice work, in usual Rockstar Games fashion, is dead on. It's stellar. I mentioned earlier that the director is voiced by Brian Cox, and my god, what perfect casting.
You coward! You fool! You're giving them what they want! They want you to think like defendants! They want you to stand up and say you are wrong! They would do anything, offer you anything to hear these words!
Brian is a Scottish actor known for his extensive work with the Royal National Theatre and the Royal Shakespeare Company. He's sort of a quintessential stage performer and is highly respected in his field. It's a credit to his acting range that he can bring King Lear to life in a prestigious theater production, and then play Lionel Starkweather, a greasy sadist who derives erotic pleasure from filming murder.
You're getting me all flustered here.
The dialogue is grotesque and will make you squirm.
Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Brian's performance as Starkweather is absolutely amazing and, at times, very comical in a pitch-black kind of way. I remember that on the PlayStation 2, you could plug in a headset that would channel the director's audio feed directly into your ear, while all other audio came through the television as normal. This was remarkable for 2003, and served to further immerse you into the shoes of Cash. You could even use your microphone to make sounds that would lure hunters to your position. It was a really neat gimmick, but the time I tried this, my brother and I just kept laughing and giving away our positions. The rest of the cast does a stellar job. Hunter gang members will usually just talk trash and taunt you. It's usually over the top and very entertaining. But occasionally, they'll say things that are categorically uncomfortable to listen to.
Look, Daddy gets confused sometimes, says things he doesn't mean.
Then there's Pigsy. Pigsy is an immense, obese, nude man that wears a rotting pig's head as a mask, lugging around a large chainsaw as his primary weapon, which, according to the lore, he keeps dull on purpose to inflict as much pain as possible. Lovely. The basic design is similar to that of Vincent Smith from Motel Hell. But what separates Pigsy is the revolting backstory as a former star in these films, and his incredible performance by Hunter Platten. The range this guy has is amazing. He can make Pigsy sound like a mentally stunted, frightened child that is confused about his circumstances.
Pigsy forgot why here. Pigsy bored, going home.
Down to a guttural, 300-pound cannibal that wants to butcher you.
Pigsy's angry! Angry!
Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Hunter's performance is phenomenal and solidifies Pigsy as an all-time video game terror icon. Truly brilliant stuff. Cash doesn't have many lines, but his voice actor, Stephen Wilfong, brings the character to life with his deep, gruff, curt delivery.
Run as far away as you can. Move your ass. Stick close and keep quiet. Make a sound and I'll kill you myself.
The character might be limited, but the performance is excellent and memorable. Each gang of hunters has a unique flavor, but my personal favorite is the Smileys. One character is obsessed with his missing shoes.
I recognize these shoe prints. They're made by my shoes!
Another is clearly channeling his deceased wife, obsessed about dinner parties and her husband's violent temper, which is heavily implied as the reason why she might not be around any longer.
Caught red-handed canoodling with that bitch! You can't leave me, Barry, and you won't leave me!
Who wants cream? Nobody? Okay, no cream.
The dialogue is creepy and very telling of the respective gang members' life prior to incarceration. It's very well written, and sometimes it's kind of funny, to be honest.
Just give up the damn shoes, you crazy-ass shoe-thieving shoe thief!
The remainder of the sound effects round out the listening experience nicely. The crunch of gravel under your boots, the thundering shock of the firearms, and the sickening pop when Cash slams the forked end of a crowbar through a hunter's noodle.
You guys all excited about this election coming up?
Yeah! Yes! Actually,
Although Manhunt garnered a ton of controversy for its graphic content at the time of its release, underneath the shock, gore, and hysteria from the media lies the beating heart of an expertly crafted stealth game.
Didn't see nothing, but I heard you. Oh yes.
If you checked out my Splinter Cell series, you know I'm a big fan of the genre. Skulking in the shadows, strategizing your next play, and utilizing tools, sounds, and the environment to progress through a tightly structured level layout is something I love doing in video games. Manhunt hits these marks, and it hits them hard. Games like Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid put you in the boots of highly trained special operatives, decked out with all of the latest bleeding-edge technology, technical support, a vast arsenal of flash weaponry, and cool personas. They're examples of classical video game power fantasies. Manhunt gives you a brick and a shard of glass and tells you to stop being a coward. Although James Earl Cash is obviously a no-nonsense, badass sumbitch who's not afraid to get his hands dirty, He obviously has no desire for what he's doing. He's not fighting for his country, and he couldn't care less about his fellow man. It's either fight or get cut to ribbons by a guy wearing his dead wife's dress.
I'm warning you, you drunk! Stop trying to freak me out!
The mechanics are pretty simple, and that's the way I like it. It's a stripped down system, easy to follow, but takes practice to master. The goal is to stalk your targets, and when they least expect it, creep up on them and do your thing. This isn't Metal Gear Solid 2. There are no options for rendering your foe unconscious. Dispatching an enemy involves ending their lives in an incredibly brutal fashion 100% of the time. When you're aiming at your target, the reticle will be green, indicating that you're locked onto them. Once you're close enough, the target goes white, meaning that Cash can perform a baseline execution. These are usually quick and savage. Holding down the execute button for longer renders the target yellow, meaning that Cash will perform an even gnarlier version of that particular weapon's finisher. However, hold down long enough for the reticle to turn red, and you'll perform an absolutely grisly finishing move. The end of level rating system, which actually does net you some cool bonus content, factors in the level of brutality you inflict on your opponents. The more barbaric you are, the higher your score. Keep that in mind for later. There are two difficulty modes, thematically named as Fetish and Hardcore. The difference is that on Fetish mode, you get an on-screen minimap. It's similar to the Soliton radar from Metal Gear Solid, but stripped down and lacking environmental geometry. 2 years before Splinter Cell Chaos Theory utilized the sound meter, Manhunt gave the player the ability to use sound as a mechanic to enhance the stealth gameplay. Sound is represented on the minimap as red concentric ripples, based on the type of noise being made. Walking on gravel will produce a small ripple, whereas a gunshot will fill the whole circle, alerting everyone in the local area. It works both ways too. If enemies are strolling by, whistling a tune, or conversing with a fellow hunter, their signature registers on the map, allowing you to plot your next move. Enemies are represented as triangles, and their status is based on color. Yellow means the hunter is idle. Orange, the enemy is suspicious and actively searching for you.
I think I got him. Watch my back.
Red is full alert. The enemies see you, and they're coming for blood.
I see him! Guys, I see him! He's here!
Much like Metal Gear's harder modes, playing Manhunt on hardcore mode takes away the radar entirely and leaves you to using your senses to survive the night. Much like Splinter Cell's light meter or Garrett's light gem in Thief, Manhunt gives the player a character index that, quite simply, is white if the player is exposed and dark blue if the player is cloaked. Simple, effective. Weapons are separated into categories by color as well. Yellow objects are used predominantly as lures to draw a hunter in or to throw him off your path.
You reckon it's him, huh?
Bricks, cans, bottles, and, well, a severed head. Now, I'm not exactly sure how Cash is keeping an 8-pound dome in his back pocket, but, you know, best not to dwell. Green weapons are one-off execution objects, like shards of glass, a strand of metal wire, or a plastic shopping bag. They're silent and a great choice when attempting to remain undetected.
Oh, that's him! I know that's him!
Blue weapons, like crowbars and machetes, are not only tools for ending life, but can also access areas that require cutting of rope or breaking of locks.
What does he mean we've all been carrying you?
These can also include smaller caliber firearms, like revolvers or submachine guns.
Ah! Like a pack of dogs!
Red weapons include the heavy-duty firearms, like shotguns and assault rifles.
Where are you?
You think you're real clever, huh?
but are also the most damaging melee weapons, such as baseball bats, and a very special tool in the final level of the game.
I've seen some nasty bastards in my time, but you're a natural born boy.
The color coding of weapons isn't that big of a deal, as Manhunt makes it very clear early on that hand-to-hand combat is an option, but a very bad idea, as the player can be overwhelmed quite easily if 2 or more enemies are present.
Okay. This is what I like to call a setup. This guy will fight dirty, but once you're through with him, I'll open the next door.
Some people have maligned the melee combat system over the years, which is their right, of course. My take is that it's really not that hard to figure out, and managing a single opponent isn't really that difficult.
Leave it to...
You're not Dante or Kratos.
I never saw you, man. Just go. I never...
It's not a game where you're supposed to run around and perform flashy combo moves.
What are you, a prairie rat?
You're supposed to be easily overwhelmed, as this is both more realistic and reinforces the stalk and execute gameplay that the title is focused on.
I got a family, please!
It prevents Manhunt from becoming a simple hack and slash action title. On the other hand, I do get that it could have been smoother and maybe less protracted. Level variety is one of the game's biggest strengths, and Rockstar does well by changing up the formula from time to time to prevent the gameplay loop from growing stale.
Get out of here! Run!
Though the basic routine of sneaking and exterminating remains throughout, objectives range from rescuing family members held as hostages in the zoo, escorting a drunken hobo through gang-infested streets, and searching for a tape and video camera in a run-down, long-disused mall, just to name a few. On a side note, I very clearly remember playing Manhunt for the first time and wondering what was contained on that VHS tape. I also remember being horrified when you finally play it back.
Beautifully done, Cash. Now just toddle back up to the bar and enjoy the show. Now, get going. Entertain me.
If I had to complain about anything, I'd say that a few scenes are kind of bland. The Carcer Chemical Factory and the mansion in Wapona Hills are basically just mindless gun battles, just popping one bad dude after another until the level is over. And frankly, the factory really could have used a dance floor. We work hard and we play hard.
My God, what's happening now?
We work hard, we play hard.
Speaking of gunplay, this is another divisive topic that some have griped about over the years. But unlike the hand-to-hand fighting, the gunplay is a mechanic that I just don't get the hate for. The gun combat in GTA 3 and Vice City was pretty piss poor, and Manhunt was a sort of test bed for GTA San Andreas, introducing the exact same lock-on mechanic that San Andreas would use the following year, which was then later perfected in Grand Theft Auto 4. If you're at a distance, you'll be locked onto a torso and can pop out of cover to whittle down your opponent, but if you're close enough, you can steer the joystick right into a headshot, and these, thankfully, are instantly devastating. As another quick aside, I remember the first time I pulled this off with a shotgun at close range, and frankly it shocked me. To this day, the effect is gruesome, and hadn't really been surpassed until Red Dead Redemption 2 came out in 2018. Gunfighting takes a little getting used to, but after a bit of practice, I can smoothly transition in and out of cover and take out any group of foes with relative ease. It's really not that complicated. With all that said, when you set aside everything else, the basic stealth mechanics, the traditional cat and mouse gameplay of Manhunt, is top notch. It's a bare bones version of the more high-tech stealth titles that came out before and after it, and it works incredibly well. After releasing Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City, Rockstar was no stranger to being embroiled in its share of controversy. The studio was quickly building a reputation as the sort of bad boy game developer in the industry. But as contentious as the public perception about Grand Theft Auto had been, Manhunt was in a class of its own. In December of 2003, New Zealand banned the game outright, and possession was considered an offense, which was only reconsidered for rating and reclassified in 2023. Manhunt was initially rated and sold in Australia, until an appeal by then Attorney General Philip Ruddock, rendered to the Australian Classification Board, rendered the game unrated and, as a result, banned. All copies being sold were recalled. The German district court, known as the Amtsgericht, confiscated all copies of Manhunt in July of 2004, as they stated that the game portrayed killing of human beings as fun, and that it glorified vigilantism. In many ways, I've always considered Manhunt the video game equivalent of A Clockwork Orange, a shocking yet misunderstood look at violence and mayhem through the eyes of an artist. Much like A Clockwork Orange, Manhunt challenges us to observe vicious displays of nihilistic brutality and dares to ask you, hey, between us, how much are you enjoying this? I had mentioned earlier that the game gives you higher and higher scores for performing more gruesome kills and in the fastest time, which is what may have been misinterpreted by some as Rockstar North glorifying digital murder. I've always thought of it as somewhat the opposite, in that every time I got a higher score on a level, I almost felt worse about myself. And ultimately, this is the point about the game I've been attempting to make throughout this video. The project was designed to make you feel uncomfortable, from wading through the broken down, wasted city streets, once prosperous in industry and left behind in a world moving forward without it, to being given little reviews of your performance at the end of each grisly scene. Manhunt is challenging the player's moral compass and displaying bare your vicarious desires to dip your toes into a taboo and wicked subject, and asking you, point blank, is this what you like? Manhunt released in an era where reality television was blossoming, and the ratings proved that society didn't really want reality. We wanted to voyeuristically gaze at a distorted version of reality, to be spoon-fed a produced version of drama, chomping on finger foods and being distracted from our own useless life choices. Manhunt was Rockstar's take on that. Like Alexander Delarge watching violent imagery in the Ludovico experiment, our eyes were pinned open to the brutality of Manhunt. We're sickened by the images presented before us, but helpless to look away. Every time you carry out an execution, the camera cuts to a third-person perspective, as if you were watching a grainy VHS tape of your choices, and someone else is in the room with you, asking, are you proud of yourself? Manhunt is a brilliant title, and I wanted to make this video to help perpetuate and preserve the idea that Rockstar was once a studio that pushed the envelope, while maintaining a super high standard of quality in their art. They were hungry and aggressive, and perhaps a tad egotistical, but they weren't afraid to put the work in when it came time. And Manhunt is a distillation of all these traits. It's video gaming as art, in its purest form. Sadly, this is where the themes we've been discussing get a little real. A game this vicious and this bold hadn't really been seen prior to 2003. Sure, there had been plenty of controversial video games throughout history, such as Soldier of Fortune and Postal 2. Hey, Mortal Kombat caused such a stir that it essentially built the ESRB, which has been the official rating system used to classify video games in the United States ever since. But Mortal Kombat was kind of silly and goofy. Freezing people with ice from your hands and fighting a four-armed half-dragon dude, I mean, come on. Manhunt, on the other hand, felt a lot more true to life, and despite some pitch-black comedy elements scattered throughout, was not having a laugh. Which, okay, if you're offended by a game, a movie, an album, etc., that's fine. If you don't like it, don't buy it. Regulate it with regards to your children, carry on. But what happens when a piece of media gets implicated in a real murder? In 2004, this is unfortunately what occurred with Manhunt. Leicester. The largest settlement in the East Midlands and one of the oldest cities in England, home to the Church of England Parish Church of St. Nicholas, a house of worship so old that it's been suggested that pieces of the architecture have been linked to the Romans. However, like any beautiful and historic city, there have been dark days. "17-year-old Warren LeBlanc invited 14-year-old Stefan Pekira to Stoke Woods Park in Leicester. Pekira was invited under the assumption that he and LeBlanc were meeting two girls. Shortly after arriving, LeBlanc brandished a claw hammer and struck Stefan in the head. LeBlanc then proceeded to stab the victim repeatedly until he perished. Shortly after the heinous, barbaric act, police found LeBlanc in the area, covered in blood. He confessed to his crime upon his arrest. The media reported that Warren LeBlanc had been obsessed with a video game called Manhunt. The media, always seeking a salacious headline, pointed to the game as an inspiration for the cold-blooded killing, as a copy of Manhunt had been allegedly found in LeBlanc's home, and the way in which he committed the homicide was compared to the style of gameplay seen in the game. Manhunt, and thus Rockstar Games, was in hot water once again. The question raised was, could a video game influence a young person's mind so insidiously as to inspire them to commit a brutal act? Is Manhunt responsible for murder? Quite understandably, Stefan Pekira's parents were grief-stricken, and as anyone would, they sought answers, and were certain that LeBlanc's reported obsession with Manhunt was what caused him to lose grip of reality and commit the horrific crime. After a thorough investigation, some truths came to light. As it turns out, the copy of Manhunt was, in fact, found in Stefan Pekira's room, and not in Warren LeBlanc's home. Additionally, police concluded that Warren LeBlanc's motive for killing Stefan Pekira was drug-related robbery. Now, being a responsible, honest human being and a gamer, I can't just dust my hands off there and close the book. Stefan Pekira's mother reported that the game did, in fact, belong to LeBlanc, who had lent the game to Stefan 2 days prior to the murder, which is why it was found in the boy's room. It's a very murky situation, and I certainly do not think that a single video game, movie, or other piece of media can turn a healthy person into a psychopath like a light switch. It's completely unfair to say that Manhunt the game is responsible for murder. However, I wouldn't doubt that someone's mind, already askew with madness and under the influence of illicit drugs, could be influenced by the media that they consume, especially if it's their entire world. And the details of the murder do somewhat resemble a version of an execution in the game. Many brilliant academic minds have analyzed the link between the effects of on-screen violence with actual violence, and it's been shown time and time again that the link is minimal. But the human mind is plasticine and fragile, which is why these games are rated accordingly, and Manhunt is specifically rated 18+ in the UK. But look, I'm not an expert in criminal psychology. I don't want to overanalyze this. The one thing I can say for sure is, Warren LeBlanc committed a cold-blooded, horrible crime, to which he apparently remained emotionless to, including after receiving a life sentence. Regardless of the influence of a game, movie, song, or whatever, the fact is, teenagers need two things: parenting and accountability. Warren LeBlanc is responsible for the actions of Warren LeBlanc, and no amount of playing video games can take away from the fact that what he did is something a psychopath would do. Unfortunately, as of 2020, it appears that a parole board has determined that Warren LeBlanc was suitable to be released from imprisonment and returned to society, stating that he has satisfied a number of requirements while incarcerated and was, quote, immature at the time of his crime. I think that anyone who is 17 years old once can confirm that we were all indeed immature at that age and didn't choose to bludgeon anyone. I certainly don't know what Warren LeBlanc's home life was like or how involved his parents were in raising him. However, evidently, LeBlanc has yet to take accountability and apologize to the Pecure family for the horror that he inflicted upon their loved one. What a jerk-off. Thank you for watching this presentation. Every view, every like, every comment, every subscription spurs me on to continue to make this content. Please consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't already, and leave me a comment or shoot me an email with any suggestions for future material.
I only get better from here.